Hatch, the Vice Chair of the Professional Fiduciaries Bureau Advisory Committee. I'm calling this meeting to order at 10:03 a.m. This meeting is being held on Wednesday, September 2nd, 2020 via WebEx teleconference and webcast with no physical public location pursuant to Governor Newsom's Executive Order N-29-20 issued on March 17th, 2020. I would like to ask our WebEx moderator to please explain the format for this morning's meeting.
Thank you, Vice Chair. This is the moderator. So welcome to the Professional Fiduciaries Bureau Advisory Committee meeting. Before we get started, I would like to remind committee members and staff to please mute their microphone. If I do detect background noise during the meeting as a result of unmuted microphones, I will provide a brief reminder or simply mute microphones as to not interrupt the meeting. We have members of the public here today, and I would like to ask members and staff to please identify yourself before speaking. To facilitate the public comment, we will be utilizing the WebEx Q&A or question and answer feature. When the committee chair reaches a point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, public comment will be requested. At the committee's direction, I will turn on and announce the opening of the Q&A feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by clicking on the icon with a question mark located at the bottom center of their WebEx screen. These instructions will be on the screen shortly and will be on the screen every time we ask for public comment for your reference. In the Ask field, typically in the lower right of the WebEx screen, members of the public who wish to provide a public comment will type, "I would like to make a public comment," and send it to all panelists. Any other communications will not be responded to. Members of the public, it is not necessary to identify yourself in order to make a public comment. We will be taking the comments in the order that they are received. I will call on a member of the public, unmute their microphone. They will be given 2 minutes to speak, and I will be providing a 30-second time warning before the conclusion. Then afterwards, muting the microphone and moving on to the next individual who has requested to make a comment. Please note that the Q&A feature is being used only as a means for the members of the public to represent that they would like to make a verbal comment. Once unmuted, the member of the public may verbally state their comment. This is not a means to ask questions of the moderator or the members of the committee. Such inquiries submitted using the feature will not be responded to. The hand-raising feature is being used only by committee members and Bureau staff. Members of the public that utilize this feature will not be called on. We will call on you if you submit a request to make a public comment at the appropriate time. If any attendees utilize profane login name, they will not be called upon to prevent members of the public being subjected from profane language. While you are free to express criticisms or negative views, for the sake of the members of the public participating on the call, please do not use profane language when making public comments to the committee. Thank you. Back to you, Ms. Vice Chair.
Item number 2. At this time, I would like to ask Angela to call roll to establish a quorum.
Good morning. So I'll call the roll and make sure that we have a quorum. Just answer present if you are in the audience. Wendy Hatch.
Present.
James Moore. James Moore.
Present.
Bertha Sanchez Hayden.
Present.
She Elder.
Present.
Thank you. With a quorum of with 4 members present, there is a quorum established. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Item number 3. I would like to ask the committee members and the Bureau staff to introduce themselves.
Hi, I am Rebecca May. I'm the Bureau Chief. Thank you.
I'm Angela Quadra, the Program Analyst for the Professional Fiduciaries Bureau.
Brett Chanyu, DCA Legal.
Bianca Angulo, DCA Legislation.
Well, I'll go. Wendy Hatch, California Licensed Professional Fiduciary and Vice Chair.
Jim Moore, Professional Fiduciary.
Bertha Sanchez Hayden, Advisory Committee Member.
She Elder, Advisory Committee Member, Public Member.
Has everybody announced themselves from the committee? With that, we'll go on to item number 4. Item number 4, please allow me to briefly address this agenda item. California law prohibits advisory committee members from discussing or taking action on any matter not on the agenda. However, this item offers an opportunity to the public to comment on items that are not listed on today's agenda. Please be aware that the public comment during this agenda item should provide information to the advisory committee members meant to be a discussion between advisory committee and the public. Though this may seem at times like the advisory members or the Bureau staff are not being responsive, following these guidelines is crucial to ensure the rules of the Open Meeting Act are followed. Before the committee asked for public comment, I ask individuals making comments not to discuss pending complaints, pending licensing applications, or pending disciplinary actions that may come before the Bureau's legal counsel. Such discussions are considered ex parte communications by potentially providing information to the Bureau's legal counsel outside the administrative record in a case. This also could potentially construe violation of the Administrative Procedure Act. The committee strongly asks that you also respect the privacy of others by not revealing the names or the conditions of any individuals in any case or complaint. The advisory committee can receive comments regarding the Bureau's process in general, but it cannot receive comments on specific cases. If you want the committee to discuss a topic not on the agenda, you may request that item to be considered for future meetings' agenda. However, a request does not obligate the Bureau to fulfill that request. If your comment is related to an item on today's agenda, please wait until we get to that agenda item. Comments at this time are only for items not on the agenda. To allow the committee sufficient time to conduct its full scheduled business, public comments will be limited to 2 minutes. Please do not duplicate or repeat comments of the previous speaker. I will now ask the moderator to call for public comments.
This is the moderator. At this time and at the direction of the committee, I will be opening up the Q&A feature. Members of the public, if you are interested in providing public comment, please click on the icon with the question mark that is located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen. And in the Ask field, type, I would like to make a comment, and send it to all panelists. So I'm going to pause for a moment to allow members of the public to access the Q&A feature. Individual identified as Linda Kincaid would like to make a comment. Linda, I will unmute your microphone here shortly. You will have 2 minutes to speak, and I will give you a 30-second warning. Linda, your microphone has been unmuted.
This is Linda Kincaid with the Coalition for Elder and Disability Rights. we've been going through past citations issued by the PFB, looking at what types of actions are being cited. They're mostly for paperwork related to licensing and getting paperwork in on time. That's the most common violation. We've seen a few citations for licensees stealing or misusing a client's assets. We've never yet seen a citation for actually mistreating or misusing a client. If I'm mistaken, you can certainly correct me on that. A new issue that we have not raised before, that is unfortunately something that we hear all too often, is when a family tries to retrieve the assets of, this would be beneficiaries of an estate, trying to retrieve the assets of a deceased loved one. They generally are faced with a requirement to sign a general release saying that they will not sue the fiduciary for any misconduct. And like I said, we see this far too often. I'm looking at a letter here where it says, there is no way we're going to give you the money and then have you sue us. And that particular licensee held the estate, a $1 million estate, for almost 2 years until the family finally gave in and signed a general release in order to get their estate back. And is there anything that the PFB is doing or will do or could do to prevent that sort of scenario where basically there's extortion? If you don't sign a general release agreeing not to sue us, then we're not going to give you your parents' estate back. And we, like I said, we see this far too often. Thank you.
The next individual identified as Richard Calhoun would like to make a comment. Richard, I will unmute your microphone here shortly. You'll be given 2 minutes, and I'll give you a 30-second warning.
Good morning, this is Richard Calhoun with Cedar. I believe it was starting in December of 2018, I specifically requested the Bureau track requests from the public for future agenda items. My recollection is the Bureau agreed to do that. My understanding is every meeting since then, we've requested that list or how we get something put on the agenda. We're approaching the 2-year anniversary and we still don't know how to get anything on the agenda or what items have been requested. I'd also like to bring to your attention enforcement. The PFB's position in written complaints not to investigate, saying these were criminal actions and the Bureau and DCA does not investigate criminal activity. We're not asking you to investigate the criminal activity, investigate the administrative acts that caused the criminal activity. And I'm calling your attention to the DCA website enforcement case referral guidelines, and category 2, which is where you're supposed to turn it over to DCA, is criminal violations including. So my question, which will go unanswered, I'm sure, is how does the PFB deny these requests of investigations of administrative things that may be criminal in nature when they're supposed to escalate it to DCA, send a letter back to the complainer saying, we're not going to even look at this. There's no thing. We're not turning this over to law enforcement. We're not kicking it up to DCA. It is my belief that the PFB has not done its fundamental job in any way, shape, or form to protect the consumers from the industry it was set up to protect, because the same fiduciaries that started the PFB that were in the LA Times 2005 are doing the same thing in the same location, just to different victims because their original victims are deceased. You should be ashamed of your actions.
This is the moderator calling on Rebecca May, Bureau Chief.
Hi, this is Rebecca May. I just wanted to make a point of clarification. Well, actually 2 points of clarification. The first is when asking about adding items to the agenda, we receive a lot of input on potential agenda items, and we're always happy to take them under consideration. We consider whether they're jurisdictional and whether or not they are related to specific complaints or investigations, because those items are not subject to public disclosure and may not be included on any agenda. Also, to reiterate what our chairwoman said, you're welcome to request consideration for agenda items to be added to our next meeting, but that does not obligate the Bureau to do that. And then also there are 2 items on today's agenda that were responsive to requests made at our meeting in June, items 10 and 12. And then further, as we've stated many times, the Bureau does not investigate or prosecute criminal acts. If a consumer believes that an individual is being neglected or physically harmed, they should contact local law enforcement, and we always advise complainants to contact local law enforcement if they believe that crimes are occurring. Professional fiduciaries are fingerprinted as a condition of licensure, so if they are arrested or convicted of a crime, the Bureau will be notified by Department of Justice. And if you have any evidence that a licensee has been convicted of a crime in a court of law, please let the Bureau know. Thank you.
This is the moderator. The next individual identified as David Warren. David Warren, I will unmute your microphone.
Thank you very much. I am requesting that you place on the agenda a mandatory time frame for responses so that individuals have an idea of how their complaints are progressing. That, for example, a reasonable period of time to investigate and reach a conclusion should probably not exceed 9 to 12 months. And if necessary to go beyond that, then the individual should be notified. Further, I would request that you set on the agenda a protocol to provide progress information to the complainants at least every 4 months so they know some action is being taken. In my case, I filed a complaint in March, and since then I've received 1 email stating that I received and nothing else. It's very frustrating for the complainant. I'm not asking that the conclusion be reached for or against the complaining party, but surely they should be kept in the loop as to what progress, if any, is being made on their complaint. This should be simple to accomplish, as it can be done on a calendaring program which is readily available, which can be used by the agency, and they can generate a reminder to the individual handling that file to indicate that we have completed X, Y, and Z during this period, and we expect to resolve this issue by this time. And if
30 seconds.
To inform the complaining party. Thank you very much.
The next individual identified as Jerry Desmond. I will be unmuting your microphone here shortly. You'll have 2 minutes and you'll have a 30-second warning. You have been unmuted, Jerry.
Good morning. My name is Jerry Desmond, and I'm here on behalf of the Professional Fiduciary Association of California, PFAC, and just wanted to note that I am participating today as part of the public on this call and in this Zoom, and to wish you all a good morning. Thank you.
And this is the moderator, Vice Chair. There's no further requests for public comment.
Well, thank you all for your comments, concerns, and requested agenda items. Moving on to item 5. Rebecca, please read the Bureau's mission statement.
Thank you, Ms. Hatch. So our mission statement is to protect consumers through licensing, education, and enforcement of the Professional Fiduciaries Act by promoting and upholding competency and ethical standards across the profession.
Any comments from the committee members? Moderator, do we have any comments from the committee?
This is the moderator. I do not see any hands up from the committee members at this time.
Then is there any public comment on this item?
This is the moderator. I will open up for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on the icon with a question mark located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen and type "I would like to make a comment" in the Ask field and send it to all panelists. I do have an individual identified as Linda Kincaid. Linda, I will be unmuting your microphone here and you'll be given a 2-minute and 30-second warning. You've been unmuted.
Linda Kincaid, Coalition for Elder and Disability Rights. I think the first words of the mission statement are very important: to protect consumers, not to protect licensees, and not even to protect assets, but to protect consumers. And here we come to a catch-22, because most of the actions that harm persons would be considered crimes. But Chief May just explained that if something is a crime, they just disregard it. They say, oh, report to police. Then if there's a criminal investigation, if there's a prosecution, if there is a conviction, a criminal conviction, then the PFB will initiate an administrative procedure to slap someone on the wrist for having committed a crime. Chief May seems to not be aware of the various standards of proof at the different levels. If we look at criminal court that prosecutes violations of penal code, that standard of proof is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. We've probably all seen that on TV and in movies where they talk about proof beyond a reasonable doubt. That is a standard in criminal court when someone commits a crime. But in administrative court, which is what the DCA would have, an administrative hearing with an administrative judge, that's a different standard, a lower standard of proof. That standard is clear and convincing evidence, not the proof beyond a reasonable doubt. So when PFB says, oh, let the cops do it, let the criminal courts do it, what you have done is taken what should be something that needs to be shown at clear and convincing evidence, and you have now elevated it where it has to be shown at proof beyond a reasonable doubt. You are forsaking your duty, you're not doing what you're supposed to do, and you're letting people continue to be abused for years.
Next individual identified as Richard Calhoun would like to make a comment. I will unmute your microphone at this moment. You have been unmuted.
Getting back to protecting the consumer, what happens if that consumer lives in a city called Oakland, California, the 8th largest city in the state of California? The PFB is supposed to protect all consumers. Unfortunately, taking it all the way up to the Consumer Oversight Committee, the Internal Affairs Committee, the Chief of Police, and the City Council of Oakland, California, that they will put in writing, and we have it signed by those police department, they will not even take a report of abuse of an elder. So if I have a conservatee that lives in Oakland, California, that's being abused by a professional fiduciary at the level of a crime, the PFB is saying, we won't do anything. We won't even look at this administrative. Law enforcement is saying, we won't even take the report, let alone investigate. The courts say that only the abuser has standing. We have this catch times 22 times 3. There is absolutely no remedy other than the PFB, which refuses to act. What is the purpose of the PFB if it's not willing to fill in the gaps? There's a problem here. Will you support legislation to correct this gap in the consumers that are getting no protection from the PFB or any of the others? There is zero remedy available for these unfortunate consumers that happen to live in the 8th biggest city. San Jose, the 3rd biggest city in California, used to only enforce the law to children. Children don't have the rights of majorities. They now changed that policy, but again, old cases were left behind the cracks. There's a huge problem that you're just burying your head in the sand. That's it.
This is the moderator, Vice Chair. There's no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your comments and concerns. Thank you, Chief May, for presenting the mission statement. Item number 6, are there any suggestions, edits by the committee members for the June 17th, 2020 meeting minutes? I have one, please. Item number 5, Uh, You refer to Miss Elder as Miss Chai. I think we should probably insert her last name instead. Committee members, any other additions or corrections? Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
This is Jim Moore. I so move to approve minutes.
Is there a second to the motion of Mr. Moore's?
This is Berta Sanchez Hayden. I second.
Okay, is there any discussion from any committee members, please? No comments from the committee members? Are there any public comments?
This is the moderator. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon at the bottom center of your WebEx screen and type, "I would like to make a comment" in the Ask field and send it to all panelists. Vice Chair, no requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, thank you. Angela, can you please do a vote by roll call to approve the minutes as presented? Except for the one correction?
Yes, you had cut out a little bit, but I believe that your change was to item number 5 to change she to elder, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with this vote, yes vote will mean that the minutes will be approved for that one, with that one change to be posted to the Bureau's website as public. So we'll start with Wendy Hatch.
I approve with the correction.
Yes. Jim Moore.
Approved.
Bertha Sanchez Hayden.
Approved.
And She Elder.
Approved.
Okay, with a vote of 4 committee members to approve with the one change, there is a it was established that a majority has approved them, and we will be posting those to the website with that one change. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Moving on to item 7. I'd like to invite the Department of Consumer Affairs executive staff to present their update.
Good morning, Vice Chair Hatch, committee members, and Bureau Chief May. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm Carrie Holmes, Deputy Director, Board and Bureau Relations at the Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you for inviting me again to your meeting to provide a department update to the Professional Fiduciaries Bureau. I'm happy to report that in July, the DCA Budget Office and Office of Information Services launched 4 new budget expenditure and revenue reports utilizing Fiscal information. The reports are fast, detailed, and easy to generate. The 4 new reports, expenditure projection, revenue, and revenue projection, can be produced using DCA's Quality Business Interactive Reporting Tool, or QBIRT. The reports with clean data will aid Bureau leadership in providing budget reports to the advisory committee members and meeting materials. DCA is very pleased to be providing these reports and is working on 3 more budget reports in the future. Another DCA priority is regulations, improving timelines and transparency. DCA's regulations unit was created by DCA Legal to directly assist boards and bureaus with regulations packages. The department also developed an online system to manage and track regulations packages and streamline review called Sharewell. Sharewell testing with a pilot cohort is now complete. There will be regular check-ins with the pilot groups to solicit feedback, and the feedback will be evaluated to determine next stages of the rollout plan. Right before your June board meeting, DCA and its boards and bureaus had just reopened offices to the public after a temporary closure due to state and local stay-at-home orders to prevent the spread of COVID-19. DCA offices remain open with preventative measures to safeguard the health and safety of our employees and visitors. I know this time has been challenging for everyone, and we are truly grateful to you for your continued service and to your staff who are being so flexible. One of the few upsides to staying home is the opportunity to expand online and remote learning. I want to invite you to participate in DCA's board member orientation, which is now being offered as 2 half-day sessions on WebEx, October 21st and 28th. The training is tailored toward board members, but much of the content will have value to your role on the advisory committee. I encourage you to register on DCA's board member resources page. In addition, a reminder that new members need to complete ethics and sexual harassment prevention training. Thank you again for inviting me to your meeting. I look forward to the time we can meet in person. If you have any questions or need anything from DCA, please don't hesitate to reach out. This concludes my presentation.
Are there any comments from the committee members? Hearing no comments, we'll move. Are there any public comments?
This is the moderator at the direction of the committee. I've opened the Q&A feature. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, click on the Q&A icon at the bottom center of your WebEx screen and type, "I would like to make a comment" in the Ask field and send it to all panelists. I will pause for a moment to allow members of the public time to access this feature. Vice Chair, no requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Ms. Holmes, for your report. Item number 8, I'd like to invite the Department of Consumer Affairs Budget Office to present the budget and updates.
Good morning. My name is Paul McDermott. I am the budget analyst from the Department of Consumer Affairs. I am here today to talk about the expenditures, the budget, and the revenues. And before we go through it, I just want to make sure that we're all looking at the same document, which is going to be the one on your screen, where we have colored rows and colored columns. And the first thing I'm going to talk about here is, since our last meeting, nothing has pretty much changed from our expenditure projections for the Bureau. They've stayed on par since basically month 1 through month 12 on the expenditures. But I'll walk through a little bit on this document here. If you look going top to bottom, the top third is going to be your personal services, which will be your salaries and wages and benefits. We were allocated, if you look at line item 21, we were allocated $356,000, and we roughly spent about $360,000. Not a problem there with a little overspending of about $4,700. We're fine with that there. And if you drop down, if you scroll down a little bit, you'll start looking at the operating expenses. The yellow column, again, is going to be what you're allocated in your budget, and the blue column is going to be what was spent as of preliminary month 12. I don't have definitive numbers on it, but I'm pretty close to what I project for you to spend there. So if you scroll down a little bit further, down to line item 62, you'll see that we have $229,000 projected to be spent out of an allocated $249,000. So we have a positive of about $19,000. Our total net appropriation is going to be $604,000 with an estimated expenditure of $589,960, or a savings of $14,000, roughly about 2 to 3% of your projected budget. Now, ideally, we like to have about 6 to 10%, but based on how the board has fiscally been responsible with the spending of their funds that they're allocated, I'm not too concerned about this. The spending is healthy. On average, the board has reverted, instead of the $14,000, has reverted about $18,000 to $20,000 a year. However, this year we had some purchase of much needed equipment, which brought it down about $5,000 this year. So I'm not too concerned about this. And at this time, on the appropriation side, the Bureau has been very diligent and fiscally responsible with their money. So this does look pretty solid to me, as it has the last couple of years. The second document, then if you go to, would be the fund condition statement. And this is basically revenues and the revenues collected and any other transfers or anything that comes to the board. Now, on the previous document, I said we had about $14,000 that reverted. That's part of this document too. Whatever is reverted goes back into this fund, and then all the revenues that are collected during the year go into this fund as well. Now, the Bureau's brought in about 4% less in revenue than projected, but if you look back at previous years, they had a 1.5% increase collected on that year. So I don't feel that this under collection for this year, 4% is any concern right now, because if you look at it, there are increases coming, and we're pretty solid with the way this fund is operating. If you scroll down just a little bit further, you'll see that the very bottom last two lines, we have revenues and economic uncertainties, which is pretty much where we are now. Not with the fund, but with the way the state of the economy is. We have about $273,000 in reserves, or 5.0 months in reserves for this year. Now, there is a negative or a downward tick going to 4.9, 4.7, and I'm not too concerned about that because this fund is pretty solid and is on par with what has happened over the last couple of years. So I'm confident with the expenditures. I'm confident with the fund. They're both solid. They're both very steady. And so far, in the last 3 years I've managed this budget, the board has been very fiscally responsible with the monies that they're charged. So with that said, if there's any other questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
I'm sorry. Any comments from the committee members? Are there any public comments? Moderator, could you open it up for public?
Yes, this is the moderator. I've opened the Q&A. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon located at the bottom center of your WebEx screen and type "I would like to make a comment" in the Ask field and send it to all panelists. Vice Chair, no requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Mr. McDormand. Thank you. Item number 9, I would like to invite the Department of Consumer Affairs Legislative Review Office to present the legislative update.
Hello, can you guys hear me? Hello? Hello?
We can hear you.
Oh, okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Blanca Angulo. I am a legislative analyst for the Department of Consumer Affairs Legislative Division. I want to run through the legislative calendar first. Monday was the end of legislative session. So what that means is all the bills that were presented to the Senate and the Assembly were either voted out or held on the floor. All these bills will now move to the governor's desk. The governor has until September 30th to sign or veto the bills passed by the legislature. November 3rd will be our general election. November 30th will be the final adjournment for the legislative year. December 7th, the 2021-2022 legislative session will convene. January 1st, all statutes that were signed by the governor will take effect. And January 4th, the legislature will be back in session. So the legislation related to the Bureau. The document that you see in front of you, it is up until July 2020, but as I said, things have changed this week. So I will be providing an update on the status rather than reading through the bill summaries that we did last meeting, sorry. So AB 1263 by Assemblymember Lowe is no longer moving forward. However, the bill language has been incorporated into SB 1474 by the Committee on Business, Professions, and Economic Development. That bill was enrolled this week and is pending action by the governor. AB 1616 by Assemblymember Lowe, no longer moving forward. AB 2430 by Assemblymember Nazarian, no longer moving forward. And AB 2657 by Assemblymember Mainshine, no longer moving forward. Last board meeting, we had a question related to AB 1396. It's how will training be handled by the bill? And in the bill language under Welfare and Institutions Code section 15657.03, Judicial Council has until January 1st, 2021 to promulgate the forms. And as we're only in September, these forms have not yet been made available, but I will keep Bureau staff updated as we get closer to that date. And I can take any questions if there are any.
This is the moderator. No committee members have raised their hand.
Is there any public comments?
This is the moderator. I will open up for public comment. If you would like to make a comment, click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen and type "I would like to make a comment" in the Ask field and send it to all panelists. I do have an individual identified as Richard Calhoun who would like to make a comment. Richard, I will unmute your microphone in just a moment. You will have 2 minutes and I'll be giving you a 30-second warning. You have been unmuted.
Since we're talking about legislation, one of the things the Bureau could do to protect the consumer is to introduce legislation that would allow them to protect the consumer, since they feel that they're currently prohibited. The session is basically over. Now is the time to introduce legislation from 2021. So I would like to encourage the committee to advise the Bureau to advocate for legislation so that the Bureau can actually start fulfilling its mission statement of protecting the consumer, because it currently is unable, apparently, to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Next individual, before we move individual, this is just a reminder that the hand raising feature is being used by the committee members and staff. So members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please participate using the Q&A feature. And we will move on to the next individual, Jerry Desmond. I will be unmuting your microphone. You have been unmuted.
Hi, Jerry Desmond on behalf of PFAC, Professional Fiduciary Association of California, just was going to add a mention of two specific measures that have moved forward to the governor that PFAC is supporting. The first is SB 1123 by Senator Chang that would clarify the definition of elder and dependent abuse, adult abuse, and will require law enforcement agencies to update their policy manuals with the new definition. The second bill is AB 2844 by Assemblymember Obernolte that would authorize guardians and conservators to satisfy their existing duties to provide accountings to the courts by submitting verified electronic account statements. PFAC, others as well, are supporting those two measures, and I believe they're moved forward to the governor for his action by the deadline that was mentioned earlier. Thank you.
Moving on to the next individual, Linda Kincaid. I will be unmuting your microphone. You have been unmuted.
Linda Kincaid, Coalition for Elder and Disability Rights. We were the sponsors of SB 1123 that was just mentioned. The bill will align the penal code definition of abuse, including isolation abuse, with the Welfare and Institutions Code definition of isolation abuse. The goal of that bill was to educate law enforcement so that they will react more proactively, or maybe even just respond in some meager way at all, when your licensees are imprisoning and isolating conservatees. So that bill came about almost entirely because of PFB licensees isolating, imprisoning, holding prisoner, denying any contact with the outside world of their conservatees, which you would call consumers. There is no protection of the consumer. A licensee can yank them from their home, dump them in a locked facility, deny any contact with the outside world, and the PFB says that's okay. We're trying to get better police policies so that law enforcement will start to engage in these crimes as what they are, crimes. However, in the interim, and in conjunction with, the PFB should be referring these crimes for investigation with the Division of Investigation. That's why you have a guideline. It says complaint prioritization and referral guidelines. Complaints in categories 1 and 2 are referred to the Division of Investigation. If
30
she
seconds.
is not aware of this document, I'd be happy to provide it for her. I can even highlight the relevant pieces to make it easier for her to understand. And I can also provide additional guidance on standard of proof in different courts. Thank you.
This is the moderator, Vice Chair. No further requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for your comments. And thank you, the Department of Consumer Affairs Legislative Representative. Moving on to item 10. Chief May, can you please present the Bureau's updates?
Yes, thank you so much. This is Rebecca May, Bureau Chief. So the first item is our application, licensing, and enforcement statistics. And the Bureau's most recent statistics can be found in the meeting materials if you'd like to follow along with me. So for licensing, these statistics represent July 1st through June 30th. I'm sorry, July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. So this is last fiscal year. During that time, we licensed 59 new people. We had 766 active licensees by June 30th. Total licensees since the Bureau's inception is 1,166, and we received 113 new applications during that fiscal year. Our complaints, the same time frame, July 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2020, which is this last fiscal year, we initiated 6 cases with the Attorney General. We issued 30 citations. We received 142 complaints. We closed 90 complaints. As of June 30th, we had 89 pending complaints, and the average days to close complaints was 178. So moving on to outreach events, I'm sure it's not going to be a surprise to anyone, but the Bureau attended no outreach events due to the pandemic since its last advisory committee meeting. As always, if there are future events, certainly there are opportunities via WebEx and Zoom that you would like for the Bureau to attend, please send me an email. So our newsletter is currently with the department's publications office. It's being beautified and formatted and made ready for public consumption. And I anticipate that'll be posted to our website in the next few weeks. And when that happens, our office will send out a notice to our interested parties list so that you can check that out. And finally, we've made some website updates. A member of the public suggested at the last meeting that the Bureau add Office of Administrative Hearings hearing information to the website. We thought that was a great idea, so we added a link on the Bureau's actions page directly to OAH's calendar. There, by going directly to their website, you can search by the licensee's name or the Bureau's name to find the information regarding any scheduled disciplinary hearings involving Bureau licensees. By linking directly to OAH's calendar, we can ensure that the most current information is available to those seeking it. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Are there any committee members' comments? Are there any public comments?
This is the moderator. I've opened the Q&A at the request of the committee. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon and send "I would like to make a comment" to all panelists. I have an individual identified as Richard Calhoun who would like to make a comment. Richard, I will be unmuting your microphone.
I would greatly appreciate additional clarification on the hearings, because I just went to the Fiduciaries website. I just went to Bureau Actions. I just went to pending hearings. And the only choices I have to search by are office location and a specific date. It does not appear that I can search for a licensee's number or by their name. So now it appears that I have to know the location, and the date in order to find out about the hearing. That's not useful. So did I misunderstand? Where's the licensee search feature? Thank you.
Next individual identified as Linda Kincaid. Linda, I'll be unmuting your microphone.
Yeah, Linda Kincaid, Coalition for Elder and Disability Rights. I have a suggestion for the newsletter, and since it's an electronic newsletter, it should be pretty easy to add content and move things around a bit if needed. Considering the knowledge gap, which I would have to call a knowledge chasm between the PFB and actual statute, I would suggest that you look outside to people who actually spend their time keeping up to date on things like rights of conservatees. And perhaps you could add a column that is written by advocates, written perhaps even by family members describing their own experiences. And I think that would be very useful in informing the PFB and informing the public on what, number one, what the rights of conservatees actually are, since so many of your licensees are handling and grossly mishandling conservatorships, and also to give the public a place to describe their experiences. Families come to us and tell us their horror stories about a licensee. We hear that there is no place they can go. The PFB doesn't listen to them. They call, they send emails, they send letters. Nobody listens to them. And giving them a column where they could submit their experiences would be a step in starting to close that chasm. Thank you.
This is the moderator, and before moving on to the next individual, I believe Bureau staff would like to make a comment. This is the moderator.
Sorry, I thought I had unmuted my microphone. I did not. This is Angela from the Professional Fiduciaries Bureau, the program analyst. And I wanted to respond to how to look up the case information on the Office of Administrative Hearings calendar. If you go to the link from our actions page, when you click on it, there are 4 different tabs at the top. One is the hearing date, case number, case name, and agency name. If you go to the case name, if you know the person, the licensee's name, you can type in part of their name and it will come up. Or you can go to agency name and select the Professional Fiduciaries Bureau. If nothing comes up, that means there is nothing that OAH has scheduled as of this time. Thank you.
Moving on to the next individual identified as Julie Darby. I will unmute your microphone at this moment. You have been unmuted.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Julie Doherty, and my mother is a conservatee of an infamous conservator / professional fiduciary in Sacramento who works in 5 counties. I submitted a complaint back in April There's been no decision rendered. I've continued to provide evidence and documentation to the abuse of this particular conservator and her fraud ring of attorneys and caregiving agencies. And at this point, I'm not being provided any information, even whether the other party has been notified at this point. 5 months, and I know I took a look at that, the last slide that showed the return time to make complaint decisions. But in addition to wanting to state that this has been hanging out there for quite a while, I've been on this call since 10 a.m. and I believe that was the first time that someone answered a response to an attendee's question. So what I'm wondering is, why is it called Q&A if people are coming on here and asking questions and making comments, but there's no response from the PFB? Hello?
This is the moderator. Does that conclude your comment?
Well, I'd like an answer. So it's not Q&A?
Hi, this is Rebecca May. I'm the Bureau Chief. Thank you so much for your comment. We are not allowed to discuss like back and forth discussion on items that are not on the agenda. These are the moments for, I guess it's called Q&A in the WebEx system, but it's an opportunity for you to make a comment for the Bureau and the Advisory Committee to receive. And then as it relates to the length of responding to your complaint, as we do appreciate patience, more complicated enforcement cases do take time. It takes time for us to be thorough. We aren't able to discuss the ins and outs of our investigative process because that's not public information and that could potentially jeopardize investigations. So that's why we don't talk about that process in public. I hope that helps shed a little bit of clarity on what the Bureau is doing.
This is Fred Chan, you legal, DCA legal. Just want to say that Chief May is correct. The Open Meeting Act does not allow the committee to discuss any items that are not listed on the agenda, although the public is allowed to make comments on items that are not on the agenda. However, the committee is not allowed to discuss them.
This is the moderator. Vice Chair, no further requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, public, for your comments. And thank you, Chief May. Moving on to item 11, Chief May, please present the status of the Bureau's proposed rulemaking.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hatch. This is Rebecca May, Bureau Chief. The Bureau staff has been working diligently in partnership with the Department of Consumer Affairs to move forward on our regulatory proposals. Regarding the first two bullets listed, the inactive retired regulation and the client notification regulation, these two are in the pre-review process, which means they have not yet been filed with the Office of Administrative Law. I promise as soon as anything changes, I will let you know. The third bullet, which is related to the implementation of AB 2138 of 2018, is nearing the finish line. The Bureau submitted our final statement of reasons with the Office of Administrative Law on August 21st. And as soon as it is adopted, our office will post it to our website and send out a notice to our interested parties list. And I believe this will be happening in the next few weeks. Thank you.
Are there any other items the committee members would like to add or comment on? Okay, is there any public comment?
This is the moderator. At the request of the committee, I've opened the Q&A feature. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment, click on the Q&A icon and submit "I would like to make a comment" to all panelists. And Vice Chair, no requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any comments from the committee? I'm sorry. Well, thank you for your, well, there's no comments, but thank you, Chief May. Moving on to item 12. Chief May, would you please begin the discussion on this item?
Thank you so much, Ms. Hatch. Again, this is Rebecca May, Bureau Chief. There was a lot of feedback at our previous meeting regarding the role of the Bureau in educating and/or training its licensee population in the profession of being a professional fiduciary. Our licensees must meet certain educational and/or experience requirements and complete 30 hours of pre-licensure education in order to be licensed, and once licensed, must complete 15 hours of continuing education, and 2 hours of those 15 are to be in ethics. The Professional Fiduciaries Act does not authorize the Bureau to provide direct training to licensees in the practice of being a professional fiduciary. I'm unaware of any other professional boards or bureaus under the Department of Consumer Affairs that are authorized in their respective practice acts to train their licensees in how to perform their professions, as that is typically the work of education providers. I'm also unaware of any licensing entity under the department that is authorized to be an education provider, and that includes the Bureau. We cannot mandate any coursework or specific topics that are not specifically required under the Professional Fiduciary Act. And however, licensees can find approved course providers and courses on the Bureau's website. Thank you.
Okay, is there any comments from the committee members?
This is Fred Chen, DCA Legal. Just want to second Chief Mays' comment here. Currently, in the Bureau's regulations, the Bureau is not authorized to provide any type of courses or training to the licensees. And I think currently who the approved education providers are listed in Title 16 Code of California Regulations, Section 4446. And what entities are allowed to provide this type of training or courses is listed under subdivision A of that section.
Okay, is there any public comments?
This is the moderator. I've opened up the Q&A at the request of the committee. Members of the public, you can click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen and type "I would like to make a comment" in the Ask field and send it to all panelists. And Vice Chair, no requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your comments and guidance, and thank you, Chief May. Item number 13. Angela, what items have you recorded from our meeting today that would for consideration to be included in future agendas?
Hi, thank you, Wendy. I have 2 items that were requested to be included. One is for the Bureau and Committee to create a mandatory time requirement for responses to complaints. And the second was to add an agenda item to discuss that the Bureau provide progress reports to complainants on their complaints. Is there anything that the committee would like added or that I may have missed that they have said?
Is there any public comments?
This is the moderator. I've opened the Q&A feature. Members of the public, if you have a comment, you can click on the icon with the Q&A and submit. I would like to make a comment to all panelists. I have an individual identified as Linda Kincaid who would like to make a comment. Linda, I will unmute your microphone here in just a moment. You have been unmuted.
It was glaringly apparent from today's discussions that the PFB needs to be educated on the California Department of Consumer Affairs complaint prioritization and referral guidelines. And I would like to see that on a future agenda so the PFB staff and Bureau Chief can educate themselves on these requirements. Thank you.
Vice Chair, no further requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for your comments. And thank you, Angela, for noting those future agenda items. Item 14, the following dates have been selected and scheduled for the last meeting of 2020, and that is Wednesday, December 2nd, 2020. If you have a conflict with this date, please contact Angela. A tentative list of dates for future meetings in 2021 will be presented at our next meeting. Is there any committee members' comments? Is there any public comments?
This is the moderator. I've opened a Q&A at the request of the committee. Members of the public, you can click on the Q&A icon and submit. I would like to make a comment in the ask field to all panelists. Vice Chair, no requests have been submitted. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, thank you. And with that, we're moving on to item 15. This meeting is adjourned at 11:10.